Justice Connect Homeless Law has been running the Women's Homelessness Prevention Project since 2014. In the first 12 months of that project, we assisted 62 women with 102 kids in their care who were all at risk of eviction into homelessness. 95% of those women had experienced family violence. The model we use is a combination of legal representation and social work support, and using that model, in the first 12 months, we resolved 80% of matters successfully and prevented homelessness for women and kids. In addition to getting outcomes for individual clients, this work gave us a really in-depth insight of how family violence is contributing to homelessness for too many Victorian women and children. The Commission handed down 227 recommendations and an almost 2,000-page report. The breadth and depth of their contemplations and their recommendations are quite phenomenal, and we have waded through them and pulled out the key recommendations that are relevant to you and the people you work with. The first of 5 things we've pulled out is a very clear and deliberate shift away from the current practice whereby women tend to flee violent homes. The focus is really deliberately now on keeping women in housing where it's safe to do so and where they choose to do so. And there are a range of measures that make that more of a reality for women, including increased security and rental subsidies or rental brokerage to make that housing more affordable.
The second issue relates to an important provision in the Residential Tenancies Act that allows victims of violence to create new tenancy agreements after a perpetrator has been removed. The Commission acknowledged this provision was being grossly underutilised, particularly because it's an important tool in supporting victims' decision to stay at home after violence occurs where it's safe to do so. The Commission has recommended that the Government consider amending this provision to make it simpler and faster for victims to create new tenancy agreements after violence occurs, in particular by removing the requirement for a final intervention order. The Commission has also recommended that magistrates hearing intervention order applications ensure that affected family members are aware of their right to apply for a new tenancy agreement, and have asked that police and other family violence support workers receive training to ensure this provision is used and promoted. The third key issue also relates to the Residential Tenancies Act and the way that victims of family violence can be unfairly held legally liable for debts caused by perpetrators and then listed on residential tenancy database blacklists. The Commission acknowledged the burden that many victims of family violence can face when seeking private rental as a result of these debts caused by perpetrators, and has recommended the introduction of a clear mechanism for attributing liability between co-tenants. Similarly, the Commission has recommended that tenants who have experienced family violence should be able to apply to have their names removed from residential tenancy databases. The Commission also made important recommendations to make it simpler for victims of family violence to remove their names from periodic co-tenancy agreements. These recommendations will help prevent victims of violence being unfairly burdened with debts caused by perpetrators and from receiving negative tenancy records as a result.
The fourth recommendation we've identified is a subject dear to homeless law's heart, which is flaws in the infringement system which impact harshly on our clients. What the Royal Commission recognised is that women who've experienced family violence find themselves overwhelmingly caught up in the fine system and find it very difficult to exit that system. They can find themselves at risk of losing their licence and even imprisonment for unpaid fines. The Commission has made recommendations that better systems are in place and that law reform is introduced to make it easier for women to exit that system. And the fifth aspect that we wanted to highlight for you is the suggested commitment to generous and innovative private rental brokerage programs to make the private rental market more accessible than it currently is to victims of family violence. There's a suggestion that brokerage of up to $180 per week could be provided to make a market that is currently not available to so many of our clients more of a realistic option. While we warmly welcome this and accept that it will be of enormous benefit to a large number of victims of family violence in Victoria, we gently caution against over-reliance on the private rental market and reiterate that investment in social housing is an essential component of breaking the links between family violence and homelessness.
Overall, Homeless Law congratulates the Commission for this report, along with all our friends and colleagues who have contributed to the process. We'd also like to acknowledge the bravery of Homeless Law clients who came forward and shared their stories with us and helped us inform the work we're doing in this area. The Commission's report forms a strong foundation for Victoria to put a stop to family violence and for us to work towards a system where victims of family violence aren't unfairly pushed into homelessness.